Hello, today I get to talk with Jim Slagle. He is with the Speakers Bureau for Fair Districts, Ohio. How are you today, Jim?
Doing great. Thanks, Sarah.
Yes, and you're a member of that, but I also want to mention that you are a retired attorney, former Common Pleas Court judge for Marion County, live in Sagamore Hills, and you've been involved in redistricting reform intermittently since 2011. So you are all up on this topic.
I've been involved in it for a long time, and it's an important issue for Ohio.
It is. So it's issue one.
That is correct.
It's issue one. So tell us a little bit about issue one. And I know one reason I wanted to bring you guys on is there's actually a lot of verbiage that's kind of confusing about issue one. So share with us, first of all, what is it?
Well, issue one is an exciting opportunity to finally hold the politicians accountable in Ohio. Issue one, and it takes a yes vote, will end gerrymandering in Ohio. That's the process where the politicians rig the congressional and legislative districts to favor themselves, their friends, or their political parties.
So right now, politicians actually kind of get to choose the districts, correct?
Well, yeah, well,
in a way.
What happens is right now, politicians choose their voters instead of voters choosing their politicians. So, yeah, that's a problem.
That is a problem. So if this does go through, so if we get enough yes votes.
Correct, yes votes.
And it goes through, what would happen?
Well, what will happen? We'll put citizens in charge instead of politicians. We'll have a 15-member independent citizens commission with 5 Democrats, 5 Republicans, and 5 independents, or actually people not affiliated with the Democratic or Republican Party. They could be members of third parties.
Yeah.
They'll be required to set up the districts in a fair and nonpartisan way. And here's what's really important. No politicians will be allowed, no lobbyists, no party officials, and none of their family members.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, obviously no family members too, because they would be pushing what the politician wanted.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they've done a really good job of filling in different loopholes that the politicians could take advantage of.
So share with me a little bit more of why this is important to give it back to the citizens.
Sure. When you have gerrymandered districts, as we say, the politicians are choosing their voters. Voters don't get a meaningful choice because they've rigged the district so that they know these particular districts, the Republicans will win, and these districts, the Democrats will win, before we even know who the candidates are. And that's not the way it should work. So we end up with a legislature and a congressional delegation that doesn't reflect the will of the voters.
That makes sense. So why is this something that you've cared about since 2011? And why hasn't this been, passed since 2011?
Well, the politicians are fighting us pretty hard, and they've done that.
So.
And not just in Ohio. This has been, Ohio's been one of the most gerrymandered states in the nation. It's been a problem, other places as well. So the politicians, are desperate to hang on to this power because it really gives them, control. And so that's why it's an issue. We did pass some redistricting reform in 2015, 2018.
Okay.
Now, the problem is we still left the politicians in charge of the process. They ignored the rules, and 7 times the districts they set up were declared unconstitutional by the Ohio Supreme Court.
Wow. This was brought to my attention by a friend of mine probably 4 years ago, last election cycle. And she's showing me this map, and it's wild. If people really want to see, they should check out the map, because she was showing me the map of these districts and how, like a whole little section of a part that should definitely be a part of a district is cut out, and it goes way down here. They do really do what we're saying. The politicians have really tried to choose their voters.
Right. And, one of the things that issue one does, in addition to the districts, they can't discriminate in favor or against one political party or the other. So that's one requirement. They also require that to the extent possible, you keep communities of interest together. So that we have people, areas that have the same representational interest together instead of split apart. Right now, that's not been a concern of the politicians. Their concern has been, how do we get the most seats?
Right. And I love that this is not a left or a right or a middle issue. I mean, it is like a middle issue, because you're going to have 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats, 5 independents, and it's going to be done by the people. And so, it doesn't have to be just for people who
Right.
lean left or lean right. This is just putting it back in the hands of.
Right, and we've taken out the
Citizens.
people that have a political interest by excluding the politicians, the lobbyists, the party officials. This was drafted by a number of people, but primarily Chief Justice Maureen O'Connor, retired Chief Justice, who's a Republican,
Okay.
but she sat on the Supreme Court and was part of the Supreme Court that 7 times declared the districts unconstitutional. So as she retired, she has worked on this issue tirelessly the last 2 years in terms of, and then she's also been able to work with experts that have evaluated other states. There's like 7 other states that have independent commissions, and that includes both Democratic states, Republican states, and battleground states.
Okay, that's amazing. I've also heard stories of like someone running for a certain office, and then because of gerrymandering, like they live in that area, and then they get cut out of the area, so they can't run for office unless they move.
Yeah, that's
to
one.
another place.
That's one of the tricks that the politicians like to play. They'll do one thing. They'll do is they'll sometimes put 2 members of the opposite party in the same district, so that they'd have to run against each
Right.
other. Or they'll take a politician that's been elected out of a certain district and change his district completely, or his or her district, so that very little of the area that the representative represented before is still in the district. So
Right.
one of the things Issue 1 does, the commission is not permitted to consider the address or location of any incumbent politician or any potential candidate.
That's really important too.
It is.
That's
No,
super
they've done an excellent job of, because they've had a chance to look at other states that have had independent commissions, they've been able to look at all the loopholes, see where, this maybe didn't work here, didn't work as well, and so they've been able to really fine-tune it to really plug in the loopholes. I've really been impressed with how they've drafted it.
That's wonderful. So other states already have this happening.
Yes.
You've been able to look at those states
Sure.
and really see what, like you just said, what's working, what's not working. So that's
Right.
amazing. So we can say like, hey, we're not the first ones to do this.
That's right.
We're coming up on the election here.
That's right.
And we can follow in the footsteps of other people that have done it and things that have worked for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been able to make a process. It's also tailored for Ohio because each state is,
Right.
is different and has different areas of interest. But no, I think it's a great proposal. And, one of the things I should mention, in addition to rigging the districts, the politicians are so desperate to hang on to their power that they've even rigged the voting language or the ballot language. So if you read your ballot language, it looks like Issue 1 requires gerrymandering when Issue 1 is designed to end gerrymandering. I mean, it's a really dishonest attempt. So we try to encourage voters, you need to study the issue ahead of time, but it takes a yes vote, and don't get confused by the ballot language.
Yes, I appreciate you saying that, because I know that was, again, I mentioned that at the beginning, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, because I have seen the confusing ballot language.
Yes.
And I even talked with someone who meant to vote yes and ended up voting no.
Yeah.
Because of the ballot language. So we don't want that to happen.
No, and that has happened, and that's unfortunate. But that was the intent of the politicians that drew up the ballot language.
Right, absolutely. Okay, so if people want to read up on this issue, you guys have a website they can go to?
We do. It's www.citizensnotpoliticians.org, citizensnotpoliticians.org, because we're putting the citizens in charge, not the politicians.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jim. I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming on and explaining all of this to us so we can just have a better idea getting ready to vote here coming up, or early voting now. So.
Thank you, Sarah. Yes, people are voting now, and they need to remember to vote yes on Issue 1.
All right. Thanks, Jim. Thank you guys so much for watching. We had a great morning here on Good Morning Akron. Make sure you stay tuned because we've got more great stuff coming up next.